Simple dynamics in communication. Now there are certain things that actually annoy me. I had very little in my job position as an assistant language teacher. Uh, my time one-on-one with any individual student is very limited because there's a lot of grammar that needs to be taught, which is part of the curriculum. So a lot of what I do is limited to asking simple questions at the beginning of the class, like what day is today, how's the weather, things like that. And when we get into an activity where I can ask them certain questions, like what did you do yesterday, or or if even if I'm given freedom, it's still rather limited. If you look at it over a week's period of time, I don't have very much one-on-one contact. But what really irritates me though is that I don't feel that many Japanese people, the influencers I'm speaking of, like for example teachers, it could be a parent, or somebody who's more or less in charge of the students, uh, tends to interfere with the communication process. I've taught my students, especially the ones I've had before, it's very important that they learn how to control their language. When they're speaking to another person, for example, they don't understand how to ask the other person to speak more slowly. Now, I walk up to students sometimes and I'll ask a question, something simple like, what did you do yesterday? What did you do yesterday after school? And the student might just blank like, you know. And at this time, basically what's happening is I'm processing through my mind, okay? Number one, does the student understand my question? Should I repeat the question? Should I speak slower? Should I use a simpler phrase? Should I say it in Japanese? And I'm processing this at very, very rapid pace. And that's my way of trying to control the communication activity. And what annoys me is when another person comes up, a third party comes up and says, "Oh, they don't know. They haven't learned that yet." And it's like, well, thank you for telling me, but it's really not helpful now. I could probably figure that out. I may have figured that out about 1 or 2 seconds before you just told me that. Okay, this is something that usually a speaker and a listener, when two people are speaking together, they have ways of working out things. And I think that many third parties are very eager to jump in prematurely and cut the conversation or interfere with the conversation, which actually confuses it more. And not only that, it sometimes makes the speakers, the target speakers, look kind of stupid anyway. So the reason it annoys me is because I've been teaching Japanese kids for nearly 20 years, and or adults as well. And I know how to process these things. I'm not stupid. I sometimes hit and miss, or every day I hit and miss on conversation. But this is something that we have to work out as human beings. It's part of communication. Control language. I've taught my students, for example, is I don't know. I tell them give themselves about 5 seconds, and if they can't answer the question, go ahead and say I don't know. That they can ask me to say it in Japanese. Anything they request, I can usually do. I can keep the communication going. I'm capable of doing that. And I think even a 13, 14-year-old junior high school student is also capable of learning how to control the conversation without interference from some noisy 50-year-old that really doesn't speak the language that well to begin with. They're not going to be able to be much help. So my advice to third parties is